welcome to Legal Management Talk, the official podcast for the Association of Legal Administrators. I'm your host, Justin Askenazy. So today, I'm excited because we're going to talk more about AI. And I know you're probably saying, haven't I already heard enough about AI over the last couple of years? But there's, especially recently, there's so much still to unpack and explain how it can help, make law firms more efficient. And so we're going to dive more into that today. And our guest today is Kriti Sharma, and she is the Chief Product Officer of Legal Tech at Thomson Reuters. And Thomson Reuters recently released their Future of Professionals report, which talks a lot about AI and how it will impact law firms in the years to come. And we'll talk more about that as we go. So first, thanks for being here, Kriti. Glad to have you. How are you doing today?
Great. And thank you, Justin, for having me. I guess we're still in the realms of it. That's okay to say happy new-ish year. So
right. Happy New Year.
And your listeners too. And I'm really hoping 2024 is the year when we start to truly embrace AI to drive productivity and all the hopes and dreams come true with this technology.
Exactly. So let's start with that productivity aspect, because of course, as the saying goes, time is money, and everyone wants to help out their bottom line. And AI is one of the ways that they're going to be able to do that in the near future. So, can you talk a little bit about what are some of the latest and greatest ways that AI is going to start speeding up the tasks of a law firm?
Yeah, so that starts by just sharing my personal experience of working with AI tools. I've been building these since I was very little. Like I was one of those kids who learned to code and build useless robots, and now I do better things with life. But when the generative AI products started to appear and transformers and natural language interfaces started to appear a few years ago, I started to automate large parts of my life because I'd rather speak to machines than to humans. So I started working on a bunch of these automated tools and systems just in my personal life and work. And what's really interesting for me as a user of all of these tools is there's generally a productivity hit you get about between 4 to 6 weeks of working with an AI system when you feel, it really just gets me now. You go through the initial phase of, these tools are so exciting and they almost feel magical in the beginning, right? We all had those moments when we used ChatGPT. And then you go through the phase of, I should learn a few tricks and tips to get most out of it. And then a few weeks in, you hit that mark of, now it's really adding value. And I personally find that I'm starting to get to that stage where whether it's using workplace productivity tools that are doing reminders and chasing work for me, or doing summary, and I'm not a very organized person, so this is just a really great gift for me. And I wanted to share this because I do think it's very easy to build AI tools now, but it's really hard to build good ones that help change habits or add real value. And so I think we're very much getting to that stage, even with the legal tools now. So to give you an example, we have products out there in either beta versions or out there at launch in market where we can do core legal tasks with up to 10 times more efficiency and productivity than we could ever do before. And some of these add value on day one, and then others that get even more powerful with a few weeks of use, as I was describing in my own personal experiences. So to give you some examples, the tasks of drafting documents, previously what used to take hours, sometimes days, we can now do that in minutes by using the power of generative AI and similar capabilities. And legal document review, it's something we've talked about. There's been AI tools, and I'm sure you and your listeners have looked at all these tools for a very long time. And we're now at the stage where we can do vast amounts, large-scale document review using small and large language models at a much, much more radical space. So what we're really seeing is in step function change in productivity for some of the core tasks lawyers do, whether it's drafting or legal research or legal review. And much of that work is being done in a co-pilot type experience with the AI colleagues working alongside us, almost releasing human productivity for more interesting tasks.
Right. And I know another thing that has been top of mind for firm leaders is that a lot of work that is usually done by senior level attorneys, partners, may get shifted more towards junior level associates, who can just plug things into the AI and do the work that way. So, how do you address the concerns that now partners may be billing less time if they are doing less work on these tasks?
Yeah, it's a great question. What we're seeing a lot is the kind of work that we do is starting to change, and the way we work is also starting to change. So by that I mean, if you're working on a legal draft, you're just finding a past precedent or past document that's quite similar is much easier, or getting started to get to a good first draft is a lot faster. What that releases is capacity to do more advisory work, more higher value work, helping clients get to better outcomes. Generative AI or AI is not the answer to every question. It's not the solution to every problem, but it is a huge enabler in taking care of many of the tasks where it can bring cognition, understanding of human language, and creating new forms of knowledge. But what we see 100% is, without a doubt, is human wisdom leading to better outcomes from AI. So that partner level wisdom, the partner level of wise and insight and intuition is going to get to better work product being produced with AI tools working alongside us. And it does create questions about training over people's career paths, right? And I think we need to start thinking through, how do we train people throughout their careers and professions into getting the most out of AI tools, because machines will do a lot of the legwork for us. So we have to start to think about the value that humans bring, the judgment, the reasoning, the intuition, wisdom, and bring those into those communications. What's interesting, Justin, for me, and fun actually, is so I'm a computer scientist by background. I've studied and built AI tools for a very long time. And for the longest period of time, the bar for who gets to create AI or who gets to get the most value out of it was quite technical. So you had to have degrees and or a lot of qualification experiences. Now we are at this stage where it's about asking questions of machines, and they speak our language to understand human language. You can interact very differently to what we had to do for the longest time, where you needed a different skill set. So I find it very encouraging, because now specialists in the field who have subject matter expertise, they can bring so much more value. They can get so much more value out of these tools that was previously restricted to more specific technical skill set holders.
Yeah, and it's important to underscore that the robots aren't taking over our jobs. It's still it's still, the human aspect is still key, because the AI needs to learn from someone. So uh so it is about training to make sure that the AI can we can help the AI help us, basically.
That's right. That's very well put. And the new kind of roles that are being created, whether it's prompt engineering or it's asking good questions of machines, training the models, figuring out the relationship between machines and humans. And the most important one, the use cases and the misuse cases of this technology, all of that requires human intuition and human wisdom. What I would say is we must remain very humble and open-minded as humanity towards, what do we bring best, and where we bring that value to society, and constantly be inquisitive about learning. I do, we talked about opportunities with AI. I do really hope that with this technology revolution, we use the capacity that we create or release to solve meaningful problems for society, whether it's creating larger scale availability or affordability of access to justice and other forms. It really is up to us to design how we change social structures or improve outcomes for people using this technology. We're very much in control of that part.
Right. And so I also want to address some of the concerns still about AI, because I know there's still a lot of nervousness out there about, the quality of the work, or privacy concerns, or, as we've seen in the past, well-documented cases of, ChatGPT coming up with making up its own, legal cases and citations. So, what are the latest improvements in making sure that some of these errors don't happen anymore?
So we have seen, or the technology world has found some good approaches to overcome some of these early challenges you talked about around hallucinations, which is the making up of sources that don't exist. And there are some best practices that have started to emerge. These are not complicated, always complex to understand or use or demand of your suppliers. So if you're a law firm that's evaluating these tools, just a few things to bear in mind is just asking questions of your suppliers or your own teams around what's the data they're using to train their models. So, for example, in our case, we build AI systems that are grounded in or tamed with knowledge of using knowledge of legal databases such as Westlaw and Practical Law. So the machines or the models are tamed to ground in the knowledge of trusted facts and a data source that we trust. And the bar is quite high. So that is really important to understand. It's very important to understand the source of data that the model that you're using is trained on. The second point I'd say is citations and referenceability and explainability. So if a machine is recommending a particular clause to use, what's the source? And being able to point to that source, and as we would always do in non-AI scenarios as well, it's just really important to do some of the basic groundwork of training on high quality data, citing, including source citations, asking for metrics for quality and usefulness and harmlessness of these tools, where how the suppliers are auditing their models for quality and accuracy and lack of and debiasing the models themselves over time. All of these are very important questions to ask. And then there is also the ROI question, which is a really important one. And if it takes forever to implement a tool, it's unlikely to get attention and adoption within the firm. So how long is the time to get customer value back? What's the training time required to get started? How deeply integrated is it into existing systems and tools that you already use, like Word or Outlook or Teams, etc.? So those are some of the most important questions I would ask from the get-go. I think also just longevity or just forward-looking tenure and of the suppliers that you're working with, and making sure that you've covered your base. It's a rapidly evolving space. We all saw the long weekend of OpenAI and all the changes that went through that. It's a very fast-paced environment. So just asking questions of, are your suppliers working with multiple vendors or reliant on one? What are their approaches? These are all just some of the foundational questions I'd recommend. And then just the most obvious one, private data in public sources or public tools, bad idea. So just treating confidential private data in the right way, and just creating more of that awareness within your colleague base of when to use which tool for what purposes. Just the most foundational things we should think about.
Thanks for watching part 1 of our discussion with Kriti Sharma about AI. Stay tuned in the coming days for part 2 of the discussion, where we learn about what to look for when choosing an AI program for your firm, upcoming regulations, and the long-term impact of AI. See you then.